Welcome to Women of a Certain Stage, the podcast redefining how we think about menopause. I'm your host, Lauren Chiren, a passionate advocate for breaking the stigma and empowering individuals to navigate this transformational stage of life with confidence and clarity. Here, we're diving into a new era of menopause support, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and actionable insights. Whether you're curious about building your personal menopause plan or you're looking to make an impact, you're in the right place. Let's embrace the change together. So tell me, why did we connect? How did we get in touch? Tell people that are listening just a little bit about how all that came together.
Yeah, so I saw you speak at the Health and Wellbeing at Work conference in Birmingham, and that must have been 3 years ago in March, maybe.
I think so.
I just was blown away, and I remember there being this kind of small room to talk about menopause that was standing room only, and you kind of came and spoke, and I knew about menopause. I've worked in HR for kind of 20 years, worked in employee wellbeing roles. I'm female. I understood a bit about menopause, but at that time, 3 years ago, I think there was still a lot of people, and probably still now, a lot of people didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And the thing that always stuck with me was your story around kind of thinking that you had early onset dementia.
Yeah.
And I actually was saying that to my husband the other day to help him understand how I feel sometimes. Just started following you then. And then last year, I think it was, I put a post on LinkedIn about my experiences with cancer, treatment-induced medical menopause. And you offered me a platform, I guess, to speak about it on your podcast. So here I am.
Here we are. So that's not that long ago, but I can imagine that during that time you've been through the mill and back. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the summer of 2023, so coming up for 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was 41 at the time. I do have a family history, although there's no genetic link that they found. So I had my first routine mammogram earlier in 2023, and it had come back clear. I then was experiencing some symptoms and decided to go and get checked out and was diagnosed.
Can I ask you what symptoms you were experiencing? Because I think sometimes people expect there's going to be a very obvious lump or there's going to be very obvious pain, but that's not always the case, right?
No, not at all. So I'd had my results from the mammogram that were clear on the Sunday. And on the Monday night and the Tuesday night, I was waking up in the night in pain as I was rolling over. So I had pain in my right breast. Now, pain is not a typical sign of breast cancer at all. So I was quite puzzled, didn't really know what was going on. It then stopped after a few nights. And I spoke to my mum and said, don't really know what's going on. I've literally just got this letter that says there is no evidence of cancer, but I've had this pain and can't work out what it is. I thought maybe it was hormonal. She said, look, have you got health insurance? And I did. She said, go and get it checked out. And I said, well, what are they going to do if they do a mammogram? I've just had this result that says there's nothing to see. And she explained that you can also have ultrasound, and that would be an alternative way to kind of diagnose or to screen. So I thought, okay, I'll go along. And then in about the 10 days before I went along to the breast clinic, I myself could start to notice just a feel that was different between the two breasts. And I could feel a kind of thickness on the right-hand side, but nothing major. And then, I went along to the clinic. I almost didn't go because I genuinely just thought it was nothing. Went along on my own because, again, I didn't think it was anything. And it became relatively clear quite quickly that there was something. And I didn't get the diagnosis until a week later when the biopsy results came through. But that was the start.
What did they do in that appointment? Can I ask you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the same kind of thing happens in the NHS, but because it was private, I can only kind of talk from that experience.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a kind of one-stop breast clinic. So you start off with seeing a surgeon, a consultant surgeon. He examined me. He said that he could feel something. He then explained that I would go and have mammograms taken in the same building, all in the same kind of space in the hospital. I'd wait in the waiting room, go and get mammograms taken, back to the waiting room, go and get an ultrasound done, back to the waiting room, and then go back to see the consultant kind of at the end of that loop. So I was there for about 3 hours and just progressively realising there was something going on. And when I had my ultrasound, the guy that was doing it said, "Yeah, we'll take a biopsy."
So they did that there and then. Yeah. So 3 hours in a private setting where everything's under one roof on your own.
Yeah,
that must have been pretty tough.
Yeah, it was. And I was trying not to worry, trying to kind of distract myself. I hadn't eaten. I remember by the end of the evening, it was the evening time. And I remember by the end of the evening, the receptionist and the nurse were like, "You need to eat something before we can let you drive home." And yeah, when you have the biopsy done, the anaesthetic, it's a local anaesthetic, but it also had some adrenaline, which meant that I was then quite kind of shaky and feeling quite jittery. And I remember saying to the guy, "Oh, is it a cyst?" Because often that's what you hear, is that it's a cyst. And he just said, "No, I know it's not a cyst." So the thing that really hit home was when I went back to see the consultant at the end of that 3 hours. And I went to shut the door behind me as I walked into his office, and there was a nurse coming in. And as soon as I saw her come in, I kind of just lost it and burst into tears, thinking, this is not good.
Let me ask you a question. So this is probably not even fair to mention this. I have a dreadful fear of mammograms. My last mammogram was a mobile unit in a Sainsbury's car park a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. And I must have been there for under 10 minutes, like literally in disrobe, job done, out you go. And I found that particularly hard. And the lady at the time, I said to her, I explained past experience, told her why I was stressed about it. And she basically said, you don't have to be here. This is optional. I remember feeling kind of like so jittery, so nervous, so kind of like, I have to do this because I've got a child, or I've got to do this because it's a responsible thing to do. And I was like, had the self-talk going on. You've gone through 3 hours. You've got this nurse coming in, and then you've got this 10-day wait to have it actually confirmed, because it's not confirmed until it's confirmed, although you know, but you don't know. So talk to me a little bit about, that gut feeling, the sense of knowing your own body and listening to what you know about your own body as well. Because I think sometimes people overlook that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very difficult in that. So it was a week before finding out, and I tried to stay positive. So they hadn't said to me, "We think it's cancer." They had said, "We don't know, and we will find out." And so I got home quite late that night, spoke to my husband, just felt a sense of guilt, I suppose. So I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I knew how my mum would also be feeling. She has had breast cancer 5 times. So I was feeling for her as well, thinking, how is she feeling with her daughter now going through this? And the nurse rang me the next day to check in. So the breast cancer specialist nurse that I'd met that evening, and she suggested going to Maggie's, the cancer charity centre. And there's one near me in Dundee. And when she suggested that, again, I was like, they're really trying to sort of prepare me here. They wouldn't be saying go and see someone at Maggie's if they didn't think it was cancer. But again, I think I just got through that week, really, and just thought I can't kind of do anything until I know for sure. And then even the day that I went to find out, my daughter had an appointment that evening, and we hadn't told her anything that was going on. She was 12 at the time. And so I was really clear with my husband, his priority is her. And so he was dealing with her, and we said I was going out for dinner with a friend. And I took my best friend along with me to find out the results. So, yeah, it was a really, really tough week. I remember being at work, being very distracted, not really knowing what's going on. And then, I went and got the diagnosis.
So what was that process like? Because presumably that was from the private clinic as well.
Yes.
So what happens in that appointment? I think, and is this all okay for me to be diving in? Right. The reason I'm asking is because very often we hear about people's experiences, but we don't hear about what really happens or what the process really is. And sometimes I think that can be helpful.
Yeah.
So you go with your best friend, your daughter is out with your husband.
Yep.
Not knowing what's going on. You don't really know what's about to happen, but suspect. So you go to your appointment, and how did that go?
So that appointment was with the same surgeon, so the same consultant, and he's remained my kind of surgeon consultant. I've also got oncologists and various other specialists, but he's remained my contact all the way through. And so we just waited to see him, went in again, saw the nurse that I had seen the previous week, and she was sat with us. And he explained that the biopsy results had come back, and they had confirmed that it's breast cancer. He explained that the kind of breast cancer it was invasive ductal carcinoma. So that means it starts in the milk ducts. And if you've heard of people who've had breast cancer who've had like a small surgery and then radiotherapy is probably the more common kind of approach. That tends to be when it's contained. So it's only stage 1 and it hasn't spread at all outside of that initial kind of milk duct. Whereas mine was invasive. So it had already spread within the breast. He was able to tell me from the pathology that the cancer was hormone receptor positive. So that then became something really important in the future. So both progesterone and estrogen receptor positive. So that basically means that the tumour has cells within it that are receptors for estrogen and progesterone. And when estrogen and progesterone bind to those receptors, then they effectively feed those cells and feed the tumour. So the tumour I knew was being fed hormonally. What he explained though was that was in a way a good thing because it gives you a number of options from a treatment point of view. So you might have heard of people being triple negative breast cancer, and that is where there's another area called HER2 receptors, and that means that there are no receptors present, and therefore it's much, much harder to treat because he explained to me it's like having a lock on the cancer, and actually we've got 3 keys or we've got 2 keys, and in triple negative you don't have any of the keys, whereas in mine we had 2 keys. So he kind of explained it in that way, said that was very positive. He then wanted to do some genetic testing because of my family history, and that takes a little while. So he said at that point, we don't know exactly what your treatment pathway will be. It's definitely you'd have to have surgery, and we don't know yet about chemo or radiotherapy. And I had to then go and get genetic testing done, so blood tests, and that took a few weeks. And then after that, I started my active treatment with the first surgery. Yeah.
So during those few weeks, I mean, I'm guessing you were back and forth with appointments and letters and phone calls and still trying to carry on as normal. At this point, did your daughter still not know, or did you decide to say anything?
No, we told her the day after I was diagnosed. So I was diagnosed on the Thursday evening. I came home from that appointment with my best friend. I came home to see my husband. I had sent him a text to let him know because, not
modern life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just knew there was no way I could let him wait, and it was kind of 10 o'clock in the evening before I got home. Yeah. So he knew when I arrived home, my daughter had gone to bed, and we knew that we needed to tell her as soon as possible. So. Yeah. We told her when she got back from school the next day.
And post the genetic test, are there any implications for your daughter, potentially?
No. So the genetic tests have all come back clear. So yeah, from her point of view, she's no more at risk than anybody else, although that it plays on her mind. Definitely.
Of course. And especially given that your mum has been through what she's been through and you've been through what you've been through, then to be told there's no genetic link must be really tough for anyone to kind of just take that on face value, right?
Yes.
That's really, that's interesting. So that's an ongoing, I guess, at the back of people's minds.
Yeah.
So you've gone through all these tests, you've gone through the calls and the letters and the appointments and everything else that goes with that. How are you during that phase?
I'm doing okay. It's a difficult phase that anyone who's diagnosed with cancer will say is the time between diagnosis and treatment starting is really hard, because you still have the cancer inside your body, and you want to get rid of it. You don't know how you're going to respond to treatment. You don't know what side effects there will be, but you're also inundated with things to do. So I use a term called Cadmin, and it is basically cancer admin. And I think particularly because I was under private healthcare, so with an insurance company, I also had a kind of added layer. I was very fortunate to have that healthcare, but an added layer in terms of admin to do. One of the first things that I did was ask for a referral to a counsellor. So I knew, having had kind of depression, anxiety on and off in the past, I knew that this was going to be hard for me mentally as well as physically. So I straight away kind of set up, and I've been seeing the same counsellor today for the last kind of 18 months. I told work. So I told work on the day after I was diagnosed. My boss was incredible. At the time, I was a people business partner for two of our exec, and there was a lot going on in the business that I was working in. And he immediately asked me whether I wanted him to take one of those business partners away from me. Effectively halving my job overnight. We were fortunate at the time, we had capacity in the team, and then later on they did get a contractor in to cover for me. So I said yes. So immediately a huge amount of pressure was...
Sorry, I'm just, sorry. It means a lot to me to hear that. I'm not, again, everything in context, but I speak to so many people who don't get any support at work at all. I know I didn't get any support because we didn't know what was going on. And it's a small thing in the overall scheme of everything, right? But every little small thing helps.
Massively. And actually that was just the start of what went on to be kind of best in class in terms of line management and employer relationship over the course of my treatment and beyond. So there was a lot to do. I was doing some work. I had lots of appointments to go to while we waited for the results, and then preparation for surgery started shortly after that. Yeah.
So with all of this that's going on, did you have any options with treatment, or was it a case of this is your treatment plan?
I had options. So we were, with the genetics, I was told that if the genetic test came back and showed that there was, that I did have one of the genes that they know is associated with breast cancer, then I would be offered the chance to have a double mastectomy. So the cancer was only in the right-hand side. But from a preventive point of view, then he would be very open to that. Because the genetic results came back negative, we still had that conversation, but there was really a kind of recommendation that there was no real benefit to doing that. And then so the surgery I had initially was a lumpectomy with some reconstruction. So they did, it was basically liposuction from my stomach to then backfill the kind of hole, the gap that's there from taking out the cancer. And I had lymph nodes removed in that surgery as well. And the lymph nodes were clear, which was good. But after the surgery, my surgeon said that he could kind of physically see with his eyes during surgery that the surrounding tissue, although we had clear margins around the tumour and there was no cancer, he could see that it just looked subject to change. It just looked like it was potentially going to change. So what he said to me at that point was, finish your active treatment, and then I would recommend you come back and we do a mastectomy. So we move from the lumpectomy to removing all of the breast tissue and doing a reconstruction. So I kind of knew at that point that when I had finished my active treatment, I would then have further surgery as the kind of completing stage.
And at any point, had anyone spoken to you about menopause?
No. So
you've got this amazing, great team around you, right?
Yeah.
And as ever, they are focused on exactly what's in front of them, which is exactly what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's great. But menopause wasn't mentioned at this point whatsoever.
No. So from a menopause point of view, I that summer had started to wonder if I was perimenopausal. So I had started to feel some symptoms from a sleep point of view and a heat regulation point of view. And I'd started to wonder. Now, I had a Mirena coil fitted a few years before that, and I had been on the pill for many years before that. So I didn't really know what my regular cycle was. I don't think I've ever had a regular cycle in my life. So there was no kind of signs from that point of view. I had literally booked an appointment to see a gynecologist, and I saw them just after I was diagnosed, just the way the timing worked out. So I was thinking, I'm going to go and see a gynecologist and I'm going to get HRT and it's all going to be wonderful. And I turned up and said, I've just been diagnosed with breast cancer and it's hormone receptor positive. And she said, okay, you'll need to have your coil taken out, which I knew. And I think I ended up having that taken out after surgery and before chemo. So I knew that had to happen. I knew HRT was probably off the table. And that was all that was really said about it. And then probably the next time menopause was talked about was with my oncologist when we looked at my kind of long-term medical plan.
And what did they put on the table at that point?
So after my surgery, they have what's called an MDT, so a multidisciplinary team meeting. And that's with the radiographer, the surgeons and the oncologists, as well as the nurses. They all look at the pathology from the surgery and decide what would be the best next step for treatment. And the oncologist, she said that she would recommend chemotherapy, particularly, even though there isn't a genetic link, but particularly with that kind of family history. She wanted to make sure we did everything we possibly could. So she recommended chemotherapy, and I had my first meeting with her. I don't know, to be honest, whether she talked about menopause at that point. I now know that chemotherapy does suppress your ovaries and can kind of prompt menopause. And if you have chemo and then nothing else, then it might come back. I now know that. I'm not sure whether I was told that at the time.
You just had a few things going on at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly. The focus is all about cancer treatment at that
point. Quite
point.
Rightly.
Treatment, and so she had two options from a chemotherapy point of view. She talks about one being fairly straightforward. I've learnt that oncologists really underestimate side effects and impact. So she termed that the easy treatment that would be fine and I'd be fine. And then a second option, which was a much more kind of comprehensive, the current sort of gold standard of chemotherapy treatment. And what would determine which one we would go with was some further testing on the tumour samples. So from the original biopsy, samples got sent to the US and you get what's called an Oncotype score. And that really tells you, it kind of profiles the tumour. It tells you whether the tumour is likely to respond well or whether those cancer cells, because the tumour by this point has gone, but whether any of those cancer cells are likely to respond well to chemo. And it also gives you a sense of the risk of recurrence in the future. Now, my Oncotype score came back as 27, which was a big surprise to my oncologist. She was expecting it to be much lower. So when she got my Oncotype score back, suddenly it was quite clear that we needed to start chemo quickly and that we needed to go with the gold standard. So that then meant instead of 4 sessions, it was going to be 8 sessions. instead of being over kind of before Christmas in 8 weeks, it was going to be 16 weeks from November to February. And it was going to be a much tougher chemo regime to go through. But again, your life is very much in their hands, and I totally trust her judgment. And then, the wheels start turning in terms of preparing for chemo.
Yeah. And how far did you have to travel for your chemo? Were you local or?
No, it was about an hour. So that was hard.
Yeah.
It was every 2 weeks on a Wednesday. My husband took me and was there with me for all 8 sessions. Had one on the 27th of December. So literally kind of had Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and then straight back to it. And then I finished on the 21st of February after 8 sessions, and dealing with all sorts of side effects. And then from a menopause point of view, I guess it would be hugely difficult to identify any menopausal kind of symptoms at that point. But the most obvious one, so I had a period in the November just as I started my first cycle, and that was the last period I've ever had. So that was 18 months ago.
So it sounds like your husband was completely supportive and there for you, and your daughter obviously knew what was going on as well. How have you felt, that family unit has supported you going through all of this?
Yeah, I mean, they've been incredible. I think it's often underestimated the impact on the partner, on the carer, and on the child or children. I felt a lot of guilt, as I think is probably quite normal. They were just incredible at supporting me, both practically, physically, and emotionally. My daughter definitely felt when people gave her attention, which I was really keen for. So I was kind of in touch with friends and family. They'd say, what can I do? What can I do? And I would always say, reach out to my daughter, reach out to my husband, make sure that they know that you care. And my daughter definitely found that strange. And there's actually a charity that I contacted. I think it's called the Osborne Trust. And they provide just little vouchers for children whose parents are going through cancer treatment. And they sent a cinema voucher. And it wasn't that I'd applied because we couldn't afford to take her to the cinema.
Yeah, of course.
It was the gesture that actually somebody else thinks you deserve this. And I remember her being quite confused and thinking, but I'm not the one going through it. She couldn't really understand kind of why are people giving me support, giving me love, reaching out to me. I mean, everyone around me was incredible. I was very open about my diagnosis right from the day one. And although I wouldn't wish it on anybody, I have never felt so loved. I just had this outpouring from family, from friends, from connections, from people I hadn't heard of for years. I posted on LinkedIn and got a huge amount of support that way. Still to this day, I can look back at that and just remember how loved I am, which is just an incredible gift, I suppose, in the hardest of times.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I've got one client in particular who, senior leader in an organization, and went through cancer on her own, literally on her own, and didn't tell anybody until after. I don't know how she did it, but the emotions, the resentment, the why was no one there for me, all the negative emotions that have subsequently boiled up for her. Because some of us we can be so good at looking after everybody else and everything else before we look after ourselves. It can feel really uncomfortable to ask for help and support, or to share something that we're going through at the time that we're going through it. A lot of us are very good about sharing our story after the event, when we've gotten through the other side, and then we're like, okay, now we can use that to go and support other people. And so I think, I don't underestimate what you did while you were going through it. And it's not like there isn't a full stop, right? This is something you have to manage, that your experience that you're going through. But anyone that's listening, I just implore you, if you're going through a tough time, to reach out and ask for help and support. And it doesn't have to be public. It can be done very privately and confidentially, but please, please, please ask for help and support, because you deserve it, you need it, and it's something that will help in that whole process going through, I'm sure.
Definitely. I would really echo that. And I think I understand and respect everyone's approach in terms of how public they want to be, how much they want to talk about it. That's entirely a personal choice. But as I say, I found so many more benefits than downsides of being open, I think I've always been someone that's quite comfortable with vulnerability, so it didn't feel hard to me. I can understand for other people it would feel incredibly difficult. But I would do the same, and just urge people to, even at the very least, kind of talk to their nearest and dearest about it, because like you say, you deserve that support, you deserve that love, and they can't give it to you if they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. So 16 weeks.
Yeah.
16 weeks. And during your chemo, were you working at all? Were you off completely? How did you manage that?
I worked on and off. I decided that work was a part of my identity that I didn't want to lose, would be a good distraction, and held a lot of kind of social benefit, social interaction during that time. So my chemo cycles were 2 weeks long. I would tend to have the chemo feel pretty rough for kind of 7 to 9 days, and then have kind of 4 or 5 days at the end of the cycle where I was feeling okay. And so at the end of each cycle, I would log on for kind of 2 days roughly each cycle. And it was a very deliberate choice. My manager was very supportive. And actually, one of the things that I do now in my role in my business, when I'm talking to people about managing someone with cancer, is let them lead the way and think about what they want. Don't assume they just want to be off for 6 months, 9 months, a year. But also from a business benefit point of view, the work you can get somebody to do if they want to be working during treatment is very different work to normal kind of day-to-day work. My role was very much dictated by what was urgent and pressing, but I couldn't do that work because I couldn't predict when I was going to feel well. And some cycles, there was a couple of cycles that I didn't do any work. So we couldn't rely on me to meet a deadline or to do something within a particular time frame. And what that meant was that I could spend my time on the things that are that are important, but not urgent. And that's a very different list of things, but I can guarantee that all of us have a list that we don't get to.
There's always something in all 4 quadrants, isn't there?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's something that I always hold up as an example where I did things like a policy review, or I was able to manage and arrange. There was some mental health events at the time, give people some feedback on things that are on that list that are important, that add value. I felt like I was adding value, but didn't have that kind of absolute deadline. And for me, when I'm talking to organizations and managers about dealing with cancer in the workplace, that's a really key area amongst many, I think, that can be a real business benefit to being flexible for the employee that's going through treatment.
So you've jumped forward to your business. Talk to me. Where did you go from working for an organisation to running your own show? So tell me, how did that transition come about?
Absolutely. So when I finished my active treatment last year, came back to work full time. Last summer, our organisation was going through a big change and was being acquired by another organisation. And through that, there was the opportunity for redundancy, or my role was made redundant. And I decided at that point that life's too short. What I'd been through.
Funny that.
I'd been talking for years. I'd always thought one day I'll run my own business. And I had always said one day. Wasn't quite ready. I'll do it when my daughter's left school, or I'll do it when she's left home, or whatever it is. And I thought, you know what, the time is now. And the redundancy money was a fantastic kind of safety net for me. So I set up Onward With You in January this year. I always, when I thought about my own business years ago, I always just wanted to do the things in the jobs that I've done for years that I really enjoy, and not the stuff I don't enjoy. So a real
sounds like a good plan, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Why not?
So a real focus around coaching, employee development, leadership development, and employee wellbeing, which had become more and more important to me in the last kind of 10 years, particularly around mental health because of my own experience and my experience in workplaces. But what my more recent experience of cancer has given me is that other part to my business, which is supporting businesses with cancer in the workplace. And from when I talk to people, I think there are a lot of people who have experienced cancer who want to support workplaces or want to support employees. But there are relatively few in the position that I'm in, where you've got 20 years of HR and corporate strategic experience, where you can combine the two. So the angle that I come at is support for the business. I think the employees get a lot of support. There is a lot of support out there for individuals going through cancer. But for the business, that's where I wanted to focus. Also,
you're very eloquent. You're able to communicate in a way that businesses are going to understand. So you've not just got the lived experience, but the employee experience to be able to bring all of that together. Yes. And I think, often I started out helping people going through menopause, but now I work with large organizations because I realize I can have more impact that way. And I train people to become menopause coaches so that they can then go and help individuals typically. Yeah. So when you're looking to work with organizations, is there a particular type of organization, size of organization, or is it literally any organization that's open to doing this work?
It's really any. So it could be anything from doing something at scale in terms of training line managers and however big a population that is. Then I have a kind of roughly 3-hour workshop that can be tailored, that would be specifically for line managers to learn more about cancer, about treatment, about the impact of treatment, about cancer or treatment-induced menopause, and how to manage people, and also people that are caring for someone with cancer, because that's a huge population as well. So it can be anything from training managers through to policy advice, through to case management. So it could be coaching a specific manager on a specific case. It could be keynote speaking and kind of webinars. And then I'm also doing some work with a clinical platform to develop a kind of line manager and HR portal for them. So having much kind of broader reach for all of their client organizations as well. So it's really anything to make that experience better for anyone with a cancer diagnosis or caring for somebody, but with the balance of making it work for business.
So talk to me a little bit about, look, it's the right thing to do. So no one's questioning that. Both of our work is the right thing to do. But businesses sometimes need the business case in order to get the budget to be able to do these types of things. That's the reality we live in, right? Whether it's a private company or public, it doesn't really matter. It comes down to money and investment, apart from just goodwill to do this work. What is the business case? What are the numbers that back this up?
So something I was really keen to do right at the beginning was to be really clear on the data. And through my work looking at stats in the UK alone, one of the challenges that I was getting was, that's quite a niche area, or that's quite a small population. And I thought, I knew my gut feel was this isn't a small population, but I needed to back that up. And what I found that actually, if you add up anyone receiving a cancer diagnosis, living with or beyond cancer, or caring for someone with a cancer diagnosis, that number is far larger than the number of new parents in a business. So the number of people claiming statutory maternity pay or statutory paternity pay in the UK. And to me, having worked in HR for 20 years, we have never once questioned, why do we have a maternity policy? We've always looked to enhance, to expand, all of that with parental policies and parent-friendly policies, which I absolutely think is the right thing to do. But actually, this is a bigger population that we're talking about. So that's one part of the business case. Another part of it is the legal responsibilities. So a diagnosis of cancer means that you are determined as disabled under the Equality Act forever. And no matter what the cancer diagnosis is, no matter how minor,
big or small,
anything, you are covered by the Equality Act for life. So there's a legal responsibility in terms of reasonable adjustments for employers. And the carers are covered by kind of, or are protected against discrimination by association on that side. So not necessarily reasonable adjustments, but they are covered and protected from discrimination. And then there's the engagement and talent business case. So you are far more likely to stay at work when you return to work after a cancer diagnosis if you've been treated well during that period of time. You are being watched as a business, and how you are treating people who are experiencing cancer treatment or going through that. So there's definitely a talent attraction, employer branding, talent retention, reduction in turnover. So at the moment, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but a lot of people do decide to leave the workforce after cancer treatment.
Case in point,
there's a cost. Yeah.
Obviously your situation was it was predicated on the fact that it was, but you had that opportunity.
Yes.
But again,
so there's definite kind of reduction in sort of turnover, recruitment costs. So I think very similar business cases to you and your work, very similar to any kind of either illness. So when we look at kind of mental health awareness and the impact of that and the business benefits of doing something like that, and also parental policy and provisions. So a lot of similar.
If you stack cancer, mental health and menopause together, I mean, the intersection's huge, isn't it? Yep. It's huge. And I think, I know what the gold standard is for menopause. So obviously the smaller an organization, the harder it's going to be for them to be able to accommodate someone who is going through treatment in some respects, because they've got less opportunity for people to step in. But there's always creative ways to backfill and to bring other people on board, to upskill, to redistribute jobs.
I'd say on that kind of yes and no. I think from a resource and finance point of view, absolutely, it can be harder, but often smaller businesses can be far more flexible and agile.
Right. Yeah.
And I've worked in very big businesses in my career, and I would have had a very different experience had I been diagnosed while working for those businesses. Yeah. One of the key messages that I am trying to get across is those businesses particularly, and probably most businesses, still think of cancer as an acute illness, or a terminal illness. So they think it's an event that
ring fence.
Some companies are like, we've got fantastic sick pay. I could have had a whole year off, fully paid in a previous employer. They would have said, right, you've got cancer, we support you, off you go, come back when you're better. Which misses the point. Or sadly, I've dealt with many kind of cases of terminal illness, and therefore it's a different ending to that case, if you like. And what I really want organizations to start thinking about cancer is thinking about it as a chronic illness, thinking about it in some of the same ways as we might think about something like MS, in terms of an ongoing impact to the daily life of that employee. And that I think we are quite far away from.
Yeah. And I think the other point I was going to make about smaller organisations is, whilst there are specific challenges to smaller organisations from a resource and finance point of view, there are creative solutions. So I think that's part of it. But equally, if you do have someone in a small organisation, they're going to have a bigger role to play in that organisation. They're going to have more skills, more knowledge, more experience pertinent to that organisation. So it's all the more important for the smaller employers to hold on to those people. And that was something I think that, just thinking about our businesses, that when I first started working out, because my background was large corporate, I navigated towards working with large corporate organizations when I first set up Women of a Certain Stage. And it wasn't until someone said to me, why are you not working with smaller organizations? Because if they lose one person from their organization, it has a much bigger impact than if, FTSE 100 XYZ company loses one person. It's just part of the machine. It's just a cog in the machine. And I was like, wow, I hadn't even thought about it. Back then, like 14 years ago, I was like, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that at all. If I lost one of my team members, that's a big loss to me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in a big organization, me leaving my company that I worked for, I'm not sure anyone noticed very much apart from my immediate team members and peers. So yeah, I think that I'm just really excited about this conversation and excited about people listening to this conversation as well. So for any organization that is listening and is curious about what's the first thing that they could do to improve their support for anyone impacted directly or indirectly by cancer, what would you say to them?
I think the number one thing is ask questions before deciding what to do.
What questions?
The questions to ask around what does good look like through this for you? What support do you need? And sometimes that can be too difficult a question to ask because people don't know what they can ask for. So as my manager did, he gave me an option and said, would it be helpful if? Now, I felt very comfortable. I could have said no to that. So you need to be kind of giving some options, but very much with the idea that the employee is in the driving seat and they can say yes or no to those options. But that's the number one thing. I mean, it is a lot of it. It's not rocket science, Lauren. It's, as you know, there's no magic formula. It's about being empathetic. It's about being a good listener. It's about asking the right questions. It's about having good intent, and looking at the employee as a human being, often kind of treating them with that humanity and empathy is the most important thing and most impactful thing that a manager can do. And then I guess from an organisational point of view, there are a number of things. So it could be about a policy review. It could be about a relook at flexible working policies or sick pay policies. It could be something bigger. So there is something called the Working with Cancer Pledge. That's like a public pledge that companies could do. It could also, on the other end of the scale, be supplying some element of funding for screening. So trying to kind of look at prevention and early detection. So there's a whole range of things. But fundamentally, we know that the most important relationship that any of us have is with our direct manager. And that's why I'm focusing in there to say, let's give you the skills and confidence and knowledge so that if and when, and sadly, it is a little bit of a when, someone comes to you who is impacted by a cancer diagnosis, you know what to say.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, isn't it? Because we haven't talked about this before. I'm going to say this, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But it's interesting that when I do my line management training, the majority of the training I'm doing is about empathy, communication skills, recognizing personality types, meeting someone where they're at. Yes, we do the menopause awareness training. Yes, we talk about signposting and all of that good stuff because that's knowledge. But the skills part is about communication. The skills part is about empathy. And I'm wondering whether that's similar with the work you're doing as well.
Very similar, very much so. I think, like you say, the knowledge is important because awareness is important, and even knowledge of kind of reasonable adjustments or things that can make a difference is really important. But far more important, you can have no policy in place, no money to be able to spend, very limited in terms of the flexibility you can give somebody. But actually, if you're a great listener and an empathetic leader, that person will have a better experience.
Yeah. And how are you now?
I'm okay. I am. So yeah, I guess going back a little bit to sort of end of chemo, meant my treatment kind of went from being active through to preventive. And that then meant, so I'm still under the care of my oncologist, but it meant going on to medications. And essentially the goal is to prevent recurrence. And the biggest thing that we can do to prevent recurrence is to eradicate estrogen in my body. So that is the number one thing that will make a difference to recurrence. So what that meant was that from April, May last year, I started a series of monthly injections into my stomach that would suppress my ovaries. And daily tablets to take. So initially I had about 9 or 10 months of the stomach injections. And initially I was on a drug called tamoxifen, which is an estrogen competitor. So those receptor cells that I talked about earlier, tamoxifen binds to them before estrogen can. So you still might have estrogen in your body, but it's not actually really able to do any job because it can't bind to any receptors. So I was on those two drugs for about 9-10 months. And then a few months ago, so February time this year, for a number of reasons, partly it was always part of the plan, partly I was going on to a new medication that needed some changes in the other meds I was taking. But I moved to 3 monthly injections. So there's confidence that my ovaries were sufficiently suppressed, that we could move to a slightly different drug that was more kind of slow release. So I now have an injection every 3 months. And that one's in my arm, which is slightly less painful than the stomach injections were. And I also changed my daily medication to a drug called letrozole, which is an aromatase inhibitor. And an aromatase inhibitor works slightly differently to tamoxifen in that it essentially mops up every last bit of estrogen in your body. Now, I was dealing with the impact of menopause from effectively from chemo, but really I think about it from sort of May time last year. And I had hot flushes, I had my cognitive impact, dry skin, eyes issues, all sorts of symptoms. Yeah. But I was managing relatively okay. I was getting there. And I naively underestimated the impact that the change in medication would have this year. And I found that much more difficult from a menopause point of view to deal with. So the hot flushes ramped up, the cognitive impact ramped up. I didn't feel so much emotional impact last year when I first went on to the first set of drugs. This year, I definitely found it in terms of self-doubt, low self-esteem. I put on weight during chemo that has never gone off because it's then kind of morphed into menopausal kind of weight gain and shift in body shape. And so, the last few months have been really quite tough from a menopause point of view. And one of the things I like to remind people of, whether it's on LinkedIn or through my work, is this is me over a year beyond active treatment. So when you think someone's back to work and they're all back to normal, it really couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm still dealing with those impacts. I'm still trying different medications. So I can't take HRT, but there are a couple of other medications that I've been trying for the hot flushes with mixed success. It's very much an experiment. I spoke to a fantastic menopause specialist, and she talked about you are your best experiment, and that's great. But it means you just have to. It's trial and error. We don't know for sure. Nobody can give me a prescription that says there you go, that'll help. So right now I feel good. I feel positive. I feel physically strong. But it's still an uphill battle.
Yeah, and I know you said you listened. I know you're aware of, or did you listen to Michelle Hindle's episode that I did?
Yeah, I listened to the episode.
Yeah. And what did you think of what Michelle had to say? I mean, Michelle, just for context, if anyone hasn't listened, Michelle is a graduate of the Menopause Coach program and a Macmillan breast cancer nurse specialist as well. So, did you have a chance to hear it?
Yes, I did. And just incredible. I think that kind of service is just amazing to have those conversations, to start them early. There's also a charity called Menopause and Cancer run by Danny Binnington, and that's fantastic as well. Really helps to make you feel less alone. I think it is still, like, I probably find myself telling people that I'm in this kind of medically induced menopause, I'd say maybe once a week, and still people are surprised and don't realise, and we're like, oh, wow, that's a lot. So I think the work that she's doing is just invaluable. I would say my oncologist, one of the reasons that she put me on tamoxifen first before an aromatase inhibitor was, in her words were, it would be too cruel to put me on an aromatase inhibitor straight away. So there was an understanding there that he knew that it was going to put me into menopause, that it would have an impact, and she wanted to take that slower. So there was definitely an acknowledgement of menopause, but there is still very little in the way of help. I went to a menopause clinic, so my oncologist referred me to the NHS menopause clinic, and the person that I saw there was great, but wasn't a specialist in cancer treatment-induced menopause. So
it's like you can get one, you can get the other, but they don't speak each. It's like having French and Chinese. I don't know. I'm trying to think of two languages that just they're not. They don't Tower of Babel
go together.
And
it is difficult. I mean, I'm still under the care of my oncologist. I have my GP. I have my counsellor. I will still go back and have a checkup with my surgeon. I've got breast cancer nurse specialists, and they all are helpful in their own areas and fantastic individuals who I'm indebted to forever. But there isn't that kind of let's bring it all together. And think about you as that whole person with everything that you're dealing with. And I think the closest is the work of the breast cancer nurse specialist.
Yeah. And how's your lymphatic system now as well?
It's okay. So I have to be careful on my right hand side. So I still have many blood tests, and I can't have anything taken on the right hand side. I think I do have a bit of build up in sometimes of lymphatic fluid in the breast from my kind of reconstruction after the mastectomy that I had. And so sometimes I feel like I fluctuate quite a bit in terms of size, which it's not too bad to deal with, but it's an inconvenience. It's difficult. It's hard when you're looking at how to get the right bras and get everything to fit on a day-by-day basis. But generally, lymphatic is touchwood has been okay.
Good. What have I not asked you that you'd like to share?
I don't know. I think we've had a pretty thorough
we have, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you some context for people that are listening, if you've listened to my other podcast, you'll know that normally our conversations are 20 to 35 minutes long. And we've been chatting for a little bit longer than that here today. But I think it's been every second of every minute has been absolutely worth every part of it. What lights you up? What brings you joy?
Oh, goodness. First thing that comes to my mind is my daughter. She is incredible. She has been through a lot. She had gone through a lot before my diagnosis. She just amazes me every single day. And then, my husband, my family, where I live, bring me joy. I have an appreciation for nature. I love the water. I like cold water. That would be a tip, actually, from a menopause point of view. I have a cold tub outside, and I found that's the best thing in the evenings to stop the hot flushes for a long period of time. Just making the most of life. And my granny passed away about 8 years ago, and I spoke at her funeral. I wrote a poem, and it was all based on the phrase that she used to say every single time I spoke to her, which was make the most of it. And she just said that all the time. And it rings really true for me, that you just have to kind of make the most of life, make the most of what you've got, and appreciate every little thing.
Make the most of it. What a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on Women of a Certain Stage. I hope today's episode inspired you to think differently about menopause and the incredible opportunities this stage of life brings. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with 3 friends who need to hear this message. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps us reach even more people. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Lauren Chiren, or visit our website at womenofacertainstage.com to learn more about menopause coaching, inspiring events, and corporate training. Until next time, let's continue making a difference, one conversation at a time.